Welcome to the Generation Fit podcast. I'm Coach Chris with Coach Benji. Today, we went over your most important questions, and you certainly don't want to miss it.
All right, so question number one, should we have the Department of Fitness in the government?
I definitely think we should have. I 100% think we should have. Whatever we have now, it's clearly not working. And from there, if you really think about it, gym class has been, or PE, physical education, has completely dropped off since we've been in school. So I can't imagine what it's like in the US right now. I just know countries that prioritize it, and being Asian myself, being from like Japan, Taiwan, China, they prioritize it to the point where everybody gets up in the morning before work, before school, and they do like Tai Chi, meditation, dance, whatever it might be, but it's all physical activity.
And they never die.
And then they also never die,
yeah. So it works out pretty well. It seems to be working nicely. But imagine if it was like, all right, if you can't do 20 push-ups, we just like cut your head off or like throw you off the top of a building. Like there's going to be no one left that can't do push-ups. Everyone's going to be awesome. But then
you have
like
3 months. You have 3 months to do push-ups or you would die.
3 months? Okay. Well, that gives you some more time. I think no one would be fat then.
What's the point?
Yeah. Like, well, that's like the whole homeless people argument. It's like, how do you get people to stop being homeless? Like you just stop giving them money. It's like, okay, they have a choice. They like either die or like they make money. So yeah. It's like this. It's like die or do push-ups. Like die or don't be fat. What are you gonna do? Turns out like it works pretty well.
Yeah, the shame, the public shame in a positive light.
Yeah,
but in this case, it's
well, in this case, it's a little negative because you're getting killed. Yeah. But so we were talking about it before this podcast formally started rolling. The La Sierra program, the La Sierra Fitness program of JFK, and so like you were telling me before, it was a very specific area in the country that they tested it. So they didn't test it the whole country, and there was very high standards for physical fitness in high schools and whatnot, where these children had to meet these physical parameters, and it worked really well though. They scored higher on all of these different physical parameters, and for whatever reason, they didn't roll it out to other places. I'm not sure why. I don't know the history about that part, but it seems like there's room for a conspiracy that it could be for nefarious reasons. Like, why wouldn't you want young men and women really in this country to be stronger, both physically and emotionally? Because that's exactly what was happening. Like, our country does not have that, like our generation, or, especially my younger generation, the hardworking spirit of being strong mentally and physically. And like, we need that back if we want to be able to grow and be in the golden age that is ushering in.
The red wave, the red pill is basically here. So a free blank check, and I think in this case RFK will probably do the best job that he can do that at hand, and there's going to be a bunch of backlash with it. So I just know that if we had a Department of Fitness, or at least a better understanding of what is healthy and what is not, right at the forefront, then I think that we can start to move forward and actually help the people generally be less metabolically destroyed, less cellular destruction, all that good stuff on top of the ingredients that we put in and the food that we eat.
Absolutely. Well, I saw the big thing about fluoride too that they were talking about, but people are freaking out about that for some reason. Why were they freaking? Why would someone freak out about taking the fluoride out of the water?
Out of the water
out of it. Like why are people like disagreeing with that? Do you know why?
I just know it's a heavy metal, and everybody's for taking it. The people like
so why are people? Why would anyone disagree? Like, what is the reason for it now, and why would someone disagree with taking it out? Because I've seen people being like, "Oh, you can't take the fluoride out." Like, why would you not take the fluoride out of the water?
That I don't know specifically. I just know it being obviously a heavy metal.
It also impacts like all these negative health disorders in the long run through time.
Yeah, so that's why I'm just saying is I don't know enough about it. I just generally opt out of fluoride, even with teeth cleaning. Yeah. So it's just. Generally speaking, I don't use fluoride. I don't know. I guess I'll have to get back to you. I guess in the next podcast, we'll just look it up and be like, what the hell's going on? But
maybe that's the whole point though. Like there is no good fucking reason.
It also could be true too. I have no idea.
Because there's a lot of things like that. What's that thing? I don't know if you know this thing. I was watching this guy, Drew Binsky, on YouTube, and he visited this African tribe, and they clean their teeth with like this stick or something like that. They like chew on this stick, and it like makes their teeth very white.
Yeah, there's a lot of cultures around the world, and imagine all of the ancestors before us didn't have a lot of problems with teeth, especially the ones that have or thrived as a whole. Like not, if it was poor or they basically barely lived, but all the ones that thrived and passed on their genetics, they generally had pretty damn good teeth. And then we started having this teeth decaying effect.
Yeah.
Once everything started becoming processed overall, not saying is like, not because it's high fructose corn syrup. I'm just saying
Just
in general, the processing of like having cigarettes, tobacco, like for example, nicotine being processed, tobacco obviously destroys your teeth. Fluoride enter the toothpastes. You have anything entering the water supply. The massive amount of grains going in. I'm sure you can look up in terms of like sugar, grains, processing, and then the timeline on which we have also dental issues and also gut issues. I guarantee you it's all going to be linear on the same timeline.
Totally, 100%. Yeah, there's so many. It's a big multivariable equation, but all of those things that you just said fit into that 100%. I'm curious if the people that had good teeth hundreds of years ago also had good breath, though.
No, probably not.
No, yeah. Imagine like they have like mint plants and they just like chew on that. Like I wonder if there's any societies. Like the Japanese are smart on like what seems everything. So I'm curious if in their old age and wisdom they knew like, all right, like see this mint plant right here? Like just chew this. And because like humans have kissed for a long time, but if you think about it, we're like some of the only mammals that kiss each other on the lips as like in a romantic way. Like I think they did studies. Like I don't think any mammal kisses each other on the lip. Like it's a little weird if you think about it from like a purely evolutionary perspective and looking at every other animal. Like that's a weird thing. So I hope like people are chewing like mint extracts, mint leaves and stuff.
Maybe. At that point, I just think they were all used to it. Now we're just in a different era where we're super clean.
Yeah. Or like the people that never showered because they didn't have them. All right. What's a realistic time frame to see results without extreme effort? So I'm going to look at this question more as not how long do you have to work out in a session, more so like when do you start seeing physical changes?
Okay. That's a good way to put it. So I think there's got to be some prerequisites here. So in terms of the timeline of you seeing physical changes, we always say that it takes about 3 months to truly see it. And it's not
drastic ones.
More drastic ones. And it's because usually what happens in the first month is that you're getting a lot more physiological changes. You're breaking out the old habits. The second month is all about consistency. So you just have to keep going. And then by the third month, it's just physiologically things are happening. So if you have done resistance training properly, ate in a caloric deficit, got your steps in, all that fun stuff, then you will start to see at least the skin, right? The fat burn off. So it gets closer and closer towards the muscle. You have more muscle, a little bit more. So you're able to see it, push it closer towards the skin. And then when you look at it from a holistic standpoint, then you're going to feeling and looking way differently, especially if you're always looking at yourself in the mirror. So if it's your eyes in the mirror every single day, you can't track day-to-day changes. Whereas if you saw a family member a couple weeks later and Thanksgiving's right around the corner, so most family members are gonna be like, hey, you lost weight. Hey, you got fatter. Like that's where
you look like a fat piece of shit. What happened to you?
Yeah, like that's where you can see the difference. So when we say is anybody I trained throughout my history, 3 months is like the timeline where I'm like, you will see the most drastic changes.
Yes.
The first couple of weeks is really like, you lost 5 pounds, 6 pounds of water weight with some fat. But what you see in the mirror, the pants falling off.
Yeah, the scale versus the mirror. Yeah.
3 months is like the general timeline.
Totally. Yeah. And another thing I've noticed too is that people judge themselves differently because they see themselves differently. If you're looking at yourself every day versus someone looking at you week to week or even month to month, there's a very big difference, right? We have our clients do check-in calls, check-in photos every single month, and we'll notice differences that are drastic, but they're like, oh, I don't even know what happened. That's why it's important to keep showing them those results through those check-ins. But you'll have someone, they come in for 1 to 2 months and they don't even realize, but then they get really excited and motivated when you compare their photos, put them on the screen and show them like, dude, did you see how like the love handles went in so much? You have a little bit of a taper now, how you're seeing an outline of your abs. Like that will come a lot quicker than those people think it's coming because it's already there, but they don't even realize because their brain is not honest with themselves. Like you will never see yourself the same as someone else does. And also you're going to be comparing yourself, in our case, with people who are prominent in the fitness industry. So we're comparing ourselves with Superman, whereas other people are comparing them, you know what I mean? Like we're comparing ourselves with Superman, whereas when we could look at our client, who they were the day before and who they are today, we could see those changes from a more objective lens as coaches.
Mm-hmm. I think the saying goes, the day you started lifting was the day you were never big enough. And it couldn't be more true. I think it's from Dom Mazzetti, so thank you, Dom. But I think the biggest takeaway here is comparison definitely is the thief of joy.
Yes.
And that's being one. And two is that you're probably way too hard on yourself. So you got to think to yourself, the actors that you see on television, they are paid to do that. They're making tens of millions of dollars to play a certain role.
And they're using the special effects.
And then using special effects and special stuff a lot of the time. Not saying all the time.
All the time.
So there's a lot of hidden behind the scenes stuff that's going on. So what you have to do is only compare yourself to where you have been versus to someone else 99% of the time. And then maybe the comparison could also be, hey, this person that you know or is around the same realm as you, same height, same weight.
Only if it's positively motivating, though.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like the whole point is like if you're going to use that as a tool, it's better be motivating you to do better.
Exactly, not to like be destructive. 100%. The only fair way to compare yourself is comparing yourself to who you were the day before, because everyone has their own advantages and disadvantages, and it's going to be so drastically different that you can only compare where you are today based on the advantages and disadvantages that you personally have had. And instead of complaining about what advantages and disadvantages everyone else has, look at yours and do the best you can with those, with the hand that you've been dealt, right? Like there's no sense in comparing your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 23. Like a lot of times the people who are on their chapter 23 that you think could never get there started off in the same shoes that you were, looking exactly how you looked. So it makes no sense to let the distance between you and your goal make you quit altogether, because that could be destructive in its own right. There's some people that, like for me, for example, like my greatest strength and weakness a lot of times comes from comparing myself to others. I'll get a lot of success that way because I don't give up, but I'm positioning myself so much further from someone else that also can be like destructive mentally. So, it could get you results, but at what cost? Right? There's a much better way to go about things, which is, hey, I'm so grateful. Like Benji from 3 months ago would have been so grateful to look at himself and what he looks like now, as opposed to, oh, I'm not good enough, I'll never get there. The Rock talked about this too. Like he had $7 in his pocket. He has that famous story where he didn't go into the NFL. He's a graduate from Miami, and he only has $7 in his pocket. He said once he started seeing a lot of success, and now to the point where he's a billionaire, sometimes he has days where he's not feeling good about himself, or he still doesn't feel like he's enough. Even The Rock. He says that's offensive to who The Rock was when he only had $7 in his pocket, because that kid would have killed to be where he's at now. So he always has to humble himself and be grateful and remind himself that he once was the person with $7 in his pocket. And we should all look at that based on our own advantages and disadvantages in life too. You don't have to be The Rock to look at it that way. It doesn't have to be that drastic. It could be for you, hey, 1 year ago I wanted to jump off a bridge, and like now I'm feeling pretty good about myself. That's you should be grateful for that then, not think you're not enough, because then it's just this endless cycle where you're destructive.
Yeah, that's a good one.
All right, so now how do I stay consistent despite frequent travel and social commitments? You want to go first on this one?
I'll speak on frequent travel first.
Okay.
So frequent travel. So our clients that are corporate workers that do have to fly for business a lot, what happens is that you actually have a lot of plans already made. So it might be tough, especially if you're in sales, you're in a lot of meetings all the time, especially when you fly away. So you basically have two major options. So if you're the person that's like flying in the day of and only staying for like a day, one night, that's easy. You can just move around your calendar around to where you can fit the workouts in the rest of the week. So that's the easy side. Let's say the harder side. Let's say you're the person that does travel and you were gone 3-4 days out of the week. It's like, yes, could you get the two workouts back to back and then wait 5 days? It's like, yes, I don't recommend that. So in this case, you probably do have to plan at least one of those days to either, get up early or stay late after your meetings, the dinners, the events in the workspace to fit in that workout at a local hotel. And in your case, you probably should do the research to see if they even have a hotel gym or if there's one nearby, walking distance. If not, it's like you do what you can in the hotel room, which is like body weight stuff as best you can on the travel side. And then in terms of social commitments, is that what it was?
Maybe we'll go over travel first and then social commitments, because they are a little different. I guess that's kind of a two-part question. Yeah. So with travel, I think like you alluded to before, there's the easy side of things. And I think a lot of people make it more complicated because they have the all or nothing mindset that I need to go to the gym 6 times a week for an hour each time. And that's wrong, right? Like a perfect program is not perfect if you can't adhere to that. So let's say you have it set up where you go 2 to 3 hours a week and you're traveling for 3 days. Well, the rest of the week, you could find that time when you're not traveling to get into the gym those 3 times for 2 to 3 hours. But like the hard way, how you said it, I think it pays to do a lot of research. So let's say you have your calendar set up where you're traveling for work and you know when you land exactly what you're going to do each day. Well, assuming that there's some free time, which there should be, do your research on number one, is there a hotel gym? If there's a hotel gym, you could be creative with the exercises you use. So you could do more reps, you could do more intensity techniques, more body weight style exercises. And there's other ways to make the exercises harder too. I've even seen people with dumbbell rows who combine the dumbbells together and row that way. I've done that before at a hotel gym. The other thing you could do is just some quick research into what gyms are nearby within, a few mile radius, like 5 to 10 minutes away, where especially a lot of these places offer a 1 to 3 day free guest pass. So just do some research, make sure that gym has the general pieces of equipment that you need, and that will integrate into your business trip, and it won't take away from it too much because you know exactly where you need to go and at what time. The only other tip I'd add to this too is planning for if you're going for a longer business trip, planning for a grocery store nearby. So upon landing, okay, I know that there's this grocery store within 5 minutes away. I'm going to get what I need that aligns with my goals, bring it back to the mini fridge, and then I have that as well for my business trip. And I'll do that and combine that with following, the best strategies that I can while going out to dinner with colleagues. I think that makes the most sense.
Yeah, definitely the best take on, especially traveling for work, a lot of traveling. So then in terms of social commitments, so let's just say you don't do a lot of travel. Let's say you're like the opposite side. You just are a social butterfly, or you just have a lot of things lined up like weddings, birthdays, holidays.
Yeah.
Right. So I think those are the kind of the big 3 anyways.
I think so.
So let's just say you have a lot of those in line with in a let's say a month span. So a couple things. So yes, these are events that usually are intimate, that are a lot of them usually are one-off. Birthdays maybe not, but the whole point is that these are special events for somebody that you love or that you enjoy being with, hopefully, and then you're just not there because you're their acquaintance, right?
Yeah.
So clear that off the shelf. So then the second part is to actually prepare for this. You would basically follow the same principles for going out to eat in general.
Yes,
realistically speaking. The whole point, though, is that yes, you do want to preload your protein and fiber, lower calories throughout the day before the event happens, right? Even so, when you go to these places, I think the biggest thing on my side that I'll bring about is the mental shift. It's always about you're there to celebrate the person, right? The food itself is also complimentary. Most of the time, unless it's like Thanksgiving where the food is literally like stuffing is once every single year, you don't have to get a certain food. Yes, maybe a birthday cake, you have a piece of cake. But the whole point is that you're there to celebrate the person or the people, not just be like, oh, I want to have that food, specifically that food, 90% of the time. Whereas now, as Thanksgiving's rolling around, we'll gladly do a Q&A with Thanksgiving stuff. That, yes, that one-off food is like you probably still have a serving of it and still be fine and still be healthy with this entire thing. So with social events, it's really just always going to be pre-planning, going in there with intent that you're going to eat less before the actual event starts, and then going forward to the event and just being generally moderate with everything else, and just hopefully that there's a protein source. And if not, no big deal. Just keep your calories low afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. If you have I agree with all of that. I think it's a good point about the shift of also the mental shift, which you alluded to, of if you have a social gathering, let's say a wedding, instead of overeating the day of the wedding and then looking at it as a punishment, punishing yourself by eating less the week after, if you pre-plan and eat moderately less each of the, let's say, 3 to 5 days before the wedding, and then plan to eat more, you're not going off your diet. You're looking at it as I'm on track with my diet still, because week to week, you still ate the amount of calories and protein you were supposed to, instead of saying to yourself, I failed, therefore I need to punish myself, because that makes people less likely to adhere in the long run, because no one wants to continuously fail.
Yes.
So I think for me, that's kind of the biggest thing that I look at. And then obviously all the strategies work, like you said, like the protein preload strategy. If you have a wedding and the biggest thing is know what your non-negotiables are, know what you definitely are probably going to eat when you go to this wedding. So if you know I'm going to have one of the pieces of wedding cake and you allot, let's say, 500 calories to that, well, then make sure in the days before, maybe if you're just having an extra piece of cake, you have 250 calories less in each of the 2 days before that wedding. right? That's the simple math. Obviously, it might be more complicated than that if you plan on eating even more so than just the surplus of having that piece of cake. But this is kind of how I would look at it if I were going to one of these events. Because how you said, you don't have to splurge on food to enjoy the event and celebrate people. But if there is something that's a part of the celebration that makes you enjoy it or that's culturally a part of it, you don't want to disallow yourself from enjoying that thing that's a part of that celebration either, right? So you want to make sure, though, that enjoyment doesn't lead to punishment. You want to make sure that enjoyment is sustained enjoyment with both that celebration and with your diet. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And we'll go into more Thanksgiving stuff as time goes around, because definitely, I think all my clients have mentioned it, and people on Instagram are like, how the hell do I lose? How do I keep on track with my diet? And the short answer is, you don't. No,
it's not true, actually, though. If you
just maintain. Right? You just maintain.
Yeah,
that week. It's all maintenance. But we'll get into that. That's just a little tidbit for next time.
Yeah, a little spoiler. Oh, Thanksgiving is soon, right?
Yeah, that's why I was like, we could definitely do
3 weeks.
I already have 4 Thanksgiving questions from people already.
Really? Already? People are like really asking that already.
Because we had the pre-plan. Basically, it's a lot of pre-planning, and then a lot of like, do I actually go for the 1 pound fat loss a week or more, depending on the situation?
Totally.
Well, yeah, you'll see. There's a lot of good questions about like, what food should I eat? What food?
Your clients are thinking ahead. My clients, you better fucking take notice of this, and we got to compete with this guy's clients over here. It's a big thing. We're actually gonna have you guys all meet up and fight after the program. Could you imagine that? We should do that.
It's a big fight.
Big like the anchorman where they all show up and it's like they all are like these crazy people.
Yeah, it's like the Avengers of the newscasting of comedy, basically.
Yeah, so we'll have like our clients show up and just like battle to the death.
We'll bubble wrap you, just make sure you don't die.
Yeah, so that's like your incentive to get into shape, though. Like if you're still fat by the end of the program, like not our fault, it's yours, and you're not gonna be able to run away from a guy with like a chainsaw. That's so good. That scene's like, I haven't even seen the second Anchorman, but I've watched the scene from the second one because they have it in the first and second.
Oh,
so many. How did they even pay for that? Like, did these actors, they were just such a fan that they were like volunteered to do it? That's my guess.
I assume so.
Yeah.
The budget was not high.
It would have been higher than the Avengers budget, like just to get these guys all in the scene at the same time.
No, it wasn't high at all.
So damn funny. All right.
Let's
see. Yeah, we're good on time right now. We can do one more question here. All right. Can I get results without cardio? And I guess it depends what you mean by that also, right? Because when we talk about getting steps in and like 10,000 steps a day is like the new thing, like that's the new kid on the block. That's what we aim for. Would you recommend that? Do you look at that as cardio? I think when people say cardio, they think about steady state cardio, and that's why, hey, you could technically do it without cardio. But how do you classify that? How do you look at that when someone says, is this considered cardio or not, your steps? Like, are you getting into shape without cardio? Yes or no?
Yeah, it's tough. I think I think the first thing is to define cardio. So yes, by definition, is just doing any sort of deliberate exercise to raise the heart rate continuously for a prolonged period of time. That's number one. Okay. 2, the whole point of steps is that it's an easy way to calculate how much you're moving on average. That's why it's the biggest marker right now that we use as practitioners. Now, to get the steps, or at least be in that range, it's like if you're the desk worker, you probably have to do something deliberate to get that step count, whether it be walking during lunch, going up the staircase, waking up earlier in the morning to just take a walk for about 20 minutes, or during lunch or after work. So those are deliberate. So is that considered cardio? Not necessarily. It's just, I know it is still deliberate taking out of time to do so. When we talk about cardio, it's usually keeping your heart rate at different zones and also keeping it steady state there. And the modality is actually completely up to you. So whether it be biking, elliptical, swimming, running, jogging, it doesn't matter. But the whole point of the concept is that you're trying to keep your heart rate at a certain time for a prolonged period of time. So for us, just know that the strategies that we use is definitely, you do not have to do cardio, but you do have to make the time to get your movement in.
Yes. Yeah. When my clients ask me, typically desk workers, do you have to do cardio to get into shape? I say, technically it depends on how you define cardio. Like most people think about it as steady state cardio, usually jogging on a treadmill. But when you look at steps, conventional thinking, we don't call that cardio. even if technically on paper it is. So I say, okay, well, technically you're not doing cardio to drop fat, but you do have to make that time for that movement. But a lot of times it's not as much about making the time for that movement. It's about integrating time that you've already allocated towards something else within cardio parameters as well. So if you are on a long call and you're just sitting on your desk, you don't need to be on the computer to be on this call. There's no reason you cannot be walking. Like when I did real estate and I was on a long call with a client that I was not required to be at the computer for, I would literally get my 10,000 steps in sometimes during one long call because I was going to have that long call that day, no matter what. And I had a decision to either sit there at a desk for that entire hour, hour and a half call, or pace around the office building. I chose to pace around the office building because it was a hell of a lot healthier and I was getting my movement in. So people always wonder, like, oh, how do you get leaner working at a desk instead of just getting fatter like everyone else around you? And this was one of the biggest reasons why I would attribute it to. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I'm sure, like, you obviously, like, we've had balances working as an in-person gym where there's time where you have to be on the computer, right? Calling prospects and stuff, but also where you're on the gym floor and obviously you're moving just because you're on the gym floor. But could you talk to that a little bit in terms of the importance of, if you are working at a desk, combining that, like, in terms of your health with, in your case, like, moving on the gym floor as well, like, the importance of that balance? And obviously that was inherent to your job, but
yeah, it's easier when your job is to move and be doing moving things, hence blue collar work. So a lot of the times that's the far other side of the spectrum where we come back home and we're tired physically just because we have been moving for 6 to 8+ hours.
For sure.
So I guess the biggest things will always be to integrate practices. So whether it be walking at all these times that you mentioned, or having a hobby, or having something that you do quite consistently that keeps you moving. One of the biggest things is joining a running club or something where there's accountability, where you just do light jogging, walking, it doesn't matter. Something that has you moving at any point in the day. Right now, it's to the point where we have less than 4,000 steps as a whole.
Yeah.
As a whole country.
I think the average is like 3,000 or something.
Yeah. And we can talk about the whole calories burn, but I think it's more of the continuous habit itself automatically will have you eat less calories and also feel healthier for it. That's like the biggest two takeaways, but there's a bunch of science with it. Sure, we can get into that. But I think if you want to just hear the bare bones of it, try to make anything you do just be more active,
more fun,
and then maybe gamify it. If you're enjoying the podcast, share with a friend who would also benefit from the information that we're giving. All right, back to the show.
And I love the running club idea too, because it holds you accountable, and it could be fun because you could be doing it with friends. If you show up every few weeks and then you all of a sudden don't show up, they're going to be like, well, where the hell did you go? They're going to text you next week that you come in. You're going to be scolded for being such a fat loser that you didn't show up. And then you want to keep going because it's fun. Maybe there's hot chicks there and you're like, I got to go to this running club, right? But other ways to do that too is just having an accountability buddy. Like, it sounds cliche or juvenile a little bit, but like the top performers in the world have accountability buddies. In the way of billionaires, it's just masterminding with other billionaires. But at the same time, in a way, they're holding each other accountable because, well, those people are crazy a little bit, and what billionaire wants to have less billions than another one, right? So in this case, it's like your friend is getting 10,000 steps in a day, and you text each other at the end of the day, hey, here's my screenshot. I got 10K steps. And then your friend, you don't want to be the guy that got 8K steps, right? You want to be equivalent to your friend in that regard. So this is a case where I think comparison is good as long as you do it in a healthy way, and as long as you just don't suck so much that you lose to your friend every week. Right?
Yeah, basically. So I think the moral of the story is you definitely want to get some sort of movement in. Do you have to do cardio? No. But if you are super sedentary, then you do have to make up for it, most likely with some sort of deliberate movement, and then cardio can be an option. Just generally speaking, we just advocate for something else like walking or having accountability buddies or some incentive where you are moving, like a hobby.
Totally. Yeah, I think that's huge. I think because a lot of people, I just wanted to touch on this also, when they think about the places like Orange Theory or F45, all these places that combine like weights with the cardio. Here's the problem with a lot of this is that the weight training is not weight training that's actually putting a lot of tension on the muscles. It's more cardio-based weight training. So really you're just doing, in a lot of these places, cardio that happens to be with weights. That's not actually building a lot of lean muscle. And then from there, it's just all steady state cardio. And obviously we've talked a lot in the past about what the problems are with this, right? How your metabolism adapts, you don't build muscle, you basically can become skinny fat by weighing less, but still having like a stomach pouch. Whereas the opposite is true when you start prioritizing building muscle. So everyone naturally assumes like, oh, I need to do cardio though in order to lose weight because that's what the industry pushes so much. But I think it's a mindset shift of like, you do not need to do like the craziest workout in the world for an hour, like you're Rocky about to go up to the Rocky steps. It can be just walking 10,000 steps a day, and that could be plenty. Like that's where you're going to burn. In fact, you're going to burn more calories from that than steady state cardio for 20, 30 minutes. That's the other thing actually, is that you burn more calories from doing your 10,000 steps than 20, 30 minutes of steady state cardio every day. It's a big shift.
Yeah, that one's a funny one.
And if you put all your eggs into the basket of steady state cardio, let's say you burn 200 calories, 150 maybe in that 30 minutes, you could have like 2 Oreos and like that already like ruins the whole thing.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing about it. It's basically if you look at face value from exercise, cardio alone, it's like, sure, you do the 30 minutes of whatever it is. But the whole point is the rest of the day that you're more sedentary. So you see how, you did deliberate cardio, then you're sedentary, which makes it basically off shift, basically just cancels each other out and it levels out anyways. So that's the whole point of step count being so reliable, generally speaking, is that no matter what you do, so if you do a run, it still counts as the steps. But then if you're sedentary, you obviously got no steps. So it kind of still evens out. And then if you just did walks throughout the day, right? It's like both of them still achieve kind of almost the same thing. It's just instead of being like super deliberate about one of them, you're just now like spreading out the steps throughout the week.
Absolutely.
Or the day. But that's a whole separate topic of front loading and back loading in terms of cardio.
It's just funny how that works because everyone puts all their eggs into that basket of like every day I need to go to the gym. I need to hit the cardio machine. I got to hit the treadmill for 30 minutes. But then they look at that as their fulfillment for the day. Like they did what they need to do physically in order to drop fat. And then they wonder why them and everyone else next to them on the treadmill every single year at New Year's is still fat 1 month later. And it's because that's not going to cut it. You went home and you ate enough calories that were equivalent to still be at maintenance. Like you didn't follow any of the habits that actually get you to drop fat. You just went on the treadmill. That's not the habit that makes you drop fat, contrary to, I guess, what's still popular belief, but definitely shouldn't be.
Mm-hmm.
Unbelievable. How many, let me ask you this. When you were at the gym, when you were in person working at the gym, and when you still go in person, who do you notice is leaner? The people lifting weights on the floor or the people on the treadmill?
It was always the weightlifters that are leaner, but that's also because it's biased because I always see them and also probably we work with them.
Yeah.
I would say is if you're talking about like just pure body fat percentage, definitely weightlifters. If you're talking about like just smaller in size, generally speaking, it's like I would say it's just so far ends of the spectrum. You had like the super skinny old people that just did cardio for like 4 hours, what seemed like 4 hours straight. Then you had the people who didn't know anything what to do, so they just went onto the cardio machines, and they were obviously overweight by hundreds of pounds, and they thought that just doing that would work, and it will. In their case, it definitely will do some, but it's why not do what's more efficient in this case? And so the answer to the question is yes. Do you have to do cardio? No, but there's always context to it, especially for health. In terms of being fit, you just gotta get your steps in. And if you're like super overweight, you probably should, just to keep your heart rate at a lower and lower rate, realistically speaking. But otherwise, it just really depends on the context. It really does.
Yeah, totally. And you're right. There are those old people that were seemingly there for 4 hours, somehow doing cardio for that long. And it was always like, a lot of times it was like weird forms of cardio too. Like it wasn't always like the conventional ones. Sometimes it was the people just pulling the rope down. Like, did you have that machine at a gym?
Yeah.
There was one Chinese lady who would go up to the bag and she would do like a 1/4-inch jump and she would like double tap the bag and she'd be like, huh, huh, like just nonstop for at least an hour, 2 hours straight. Unbelievable. Maybe she was training her mind.
Could be.
I don't know. That should be a full episode. Just the weirdest things we've seen at the gym. I know we talked about it a little bit in the past. Okay. How do I stay fit without disrupting my energy levels and focus at work? This is what the president is asking us, the president-elect. He wants to know because he eats McDonald's every day and he's like, we need at least a good 4 years. So yeah, how do we stay fit without disrupting energy and focus at work? Here's another reframe where it's like the question isn't the right question, but it makes sense based on what people have been taught. Ironically, you're going to get more energy from actually going to the gym, but a lot of times you're not going to want to go to the gym. You're not going to be motivated because you have less energy. Why does that work? Because one, when you go to the gym, you're more likely to adhere to a healthier diet anyways. That's just a psychological principle in humans. And then also that's a natural stress reliever, which is naturally going to boost your sleep. And all of those habits together combine for a lot more energy as time goes on, where you wake up and you start to get more refreshed as you follow these habits more and more. But I'm sure you could speak to that a little bit more as well, as some of the other variables in that equation.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways you can go about this. I'll bring into light the point of if you're already a person that's so work focused and you're afraid that you're going to lose productivity at work, I actually urge you to think the opposite way. I urge you to think that how much time you actually spend working, and then being like, how much time do I actually work versus just sitting at that chair behind that computer doing nothing. And I guarantee you, if you were to have, in this case, a middle of the day break, let's say 2 hours for lunch to do a workout and then come back in, eat something healthy and go back to work, I guarantee you, you're actually more productive during that day. So that's 100%. One. Two is if you're just generally fitter physically, you're most likely going to be mentally fitter. It's just because of what Benji said, the lifestyle changes that you have. You're eating healthier. You're probably leaner, right? Your gut is probably healthier, so you're not getting all this brain fog, indigestion. It's a whole lifestyle change, and it requires energy to make energy, right? These are just basic laws of physics. The more energy you give, the more energy you get back. So in this case, I can tell you from my personal experience, when I used to eat like crap and not move except for playing sports, it was always a grind to get up, to move, to physically do something. If somebody wanted to do something, I'd be like, oh, I got to do this. Then when it came to work,
absolutely,
and when I worked white collar, it was like, yeah, I didn't want to go work out because it was like the whole day was drawn out. And when I didn't work out, it would repeat itself. It would domino into being like, oh, I don't want to work out. I feel like crap, but I have to go back to work, but I feel like crap. And it's like breaking that cycle. I guarantee you, being that physically fit, being that mentally fit, and also being physiologically healthy, you put that all together, and I guarantee you, you will be a lot more productive at work because all of those things are aligned.
Absolutely. Yeah. Everyone's naturally afraid of their productivity, but if you can get a quick 30, 45 minute workout in, you're going to have more energy. Another thing that, and this compounds just on top of all the variables you just talked about, but a lot of people aren't going to consider the fact that as you get better at something and do something challenging, that sends a signal of dopamine to your brain, which gives you more motivation to move more and to be more active. And that ultimately is going to create this positive feedback loop of constantly giving you more energy. Like you said, you put this energy in, you get even more out. And in turn, just from lifting heavy weights, doing challenging bouts of things week to week, that's going to increase your testosterone levels. Your hormonal health is going to be better, and you're going to be a lot physiologically healthier because of that. And it constantly keeps growing from there. Right? And it's almost instant too. It's not like something that takes a long time. It's like you do 2 hard workouts and you're instantly just feeling mentally better about yourself. And then that gives you a better sleep. And then you have better mental acuity and clarity during your work. I've definitely noticed this from sitting at a desk, doing cold calls on real estate nonstop and feeling like shit, my hormonal health being bad, my physiological health as a whole being very poor. And the results of that, I actually lost weight, but got fatter. And there was a lot of stress involved. And, I just did not look good whatsoever, did not feel good. Whereas the opposite, now I'm working even more. I'm still finding time for those 45-minute workouts, and it's going quite well. It's a big difference. Mm-hmm. If someone, when you see someone, what's the first thing you think when you see a lot of people who sit at a desk and their rationale or argument to you is that like, oh, you don't understand. Like, I'm just like I'm working so much, like, or I don't have any energy. Like I can't do it. I just want to go home and, just put my work stuff aside and just like lay down. Like, what do you say to those people?
It's all mental frame shift. It's a shift of priorities. So right now the pain isn't big enough for you to change your habits just yet. So if you really think about it, yes, what's happening is, which is the majority of people, that they express a pain, a small, whatever, how big it is. In this case, it's, I want to be fitter. I want more energy, and it's going to cut my production at work. That's the complaint.
Yeah.
So for them, the frame shift is usually if you prioritize time to go to sleep earlier, to wake up earlier, to get that lift in, to get that cardio in, exercise, then get to work. It's like, I guarantee you already feel better overall. And for the people that are like, oh, I feel tired after work. Well, yeah. So I mean, your choice to go after work and then have also not a lot of time for yourself afterwards is a choice. It basically becomes, what priorities are you going to make? Do you want to stay the same, that you get a little bit extra time and just feel like crap? Or do you want to prioritize getting into sleep, to get the wake up early bird to the gym by 5, 6 in the morning, to get that lift in before you have to travel to work, right? Either you or stay the same and you go to work and you're still productive, fine, but you're not fitter for it. Or you actually get even more fit, and the sacrifices that you take to be even more productive, all it is working out, getting up an hour or two earlier, or or going to the gym for an hour or two after work.
Yeah.
Right? Because you have to shower, eat.
And only a few times a week too, not every single day.
Yeah, it's a shift of priorities. It's what you deem as important to you, how much pain are you going through, it's how bad do you want it, and then align those actions with your priorities. And I guarantee you, without even thinking about it, you will achieve what you want and still be productive at work.
You're 100% right. A lot of people will ask the question of, oh, how do I get into shape if I have this external factor that is preventing me from getting into shape? And you've already lost if you're saying you can't because of something. Because, oh, how can you help me, Coach Chris, Coach Benji? How can you help me with this? I can't do this. Well, you just said you can't do it, so I can't help you. Right? So the shift has to be, one, hey, I could do this, but I'm struggling because of X, Y, and Z. Like, could you help me with this? Yes, I could help you. Yeah. Right? Like, that's a big thing. And then a lot of Instagram coaches are just going to give you some bullshit of, hey, you could do this in a very creative way, and you could just like breathe air and get into shape, basically, right? Like all these BS answers. But what a lot of people are not going to tell people, which is the truth, is that it is a shift in priorities. Like, there are all these tips and tricks that do help. That's why we have this podcast. But ultimately, what it's going to come down to is the basic principles that everyone follows that's in shape. And then it's, how much do you want that? How important is it to you? Because discipline is the art actually of saying no to a larger percentage of things as opposed to less. It's not just like, if you're thinking about, okay, how does this person constantly do this on a consistent basis? How does he show up to the gym every day? Well, it's because all the mental effort was not to show up to the gym. The mental effort was to say no to going out with his friends, or no to getting that extra hour of rest sitting on the couch watching Netflix. That's where the discipline lies, not in actually going and saying no to the other thing that in the meantime you're going to get instant gratification from. That's what discipline is. Mm-hmm. Pretty fired up about that.
Yeah, that was good.
All right, you want to do one more?
Let's do it.
Chris is he's a very important man. He's going into the city today in a limo, and he's meeting with some important people in politics. He might be in the Ministry of Fitness, so he doesn't have that much time left on this podcast.
Imagine.
That'd be awesome. I'd be jealous, though. Some of these questions are a little repetitive because, our fans are very similar people sometimes.
What was the first one that we shot that didn't happen?
Can I prevent fitness from interfering with family and personal time? Did we talk about that already?
Well, it wasn't cut.
Oh, and then we didn't talk about it again?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. So how can you prevent fitness from interfering? I feel like we did. Did we really not talk?
Well, we cut it. Remember, we had a...
Yeah, but then we didn't do it again?
No, we went right to the second question.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so how can we prevent fitness from interfering with family and personal time?
It's all mental shift. This is all mental shifts. Like, everybody I think this is why this is so important, is I think the better information now is, how do we shift our focus? How do we change how we ask that question.
Yes.
Because the question implies that you don't have the time or that you don't prioritize your time to make it happen, right? Whereas if you said the question was, how do I stay fit along with being there for my family? Then the question there implies that you are actively trying to do something to also be with your family too.
Yes.
So it literally is how you ask that question frames the entire way that we think about it. In this case, I would reframe it to that you will have actually more family time with it. If anything, you will lead the life that you will want your kids to have.
Yes.
That future generations will have, but it's just the framing. You have the time. You want to be the leader to be able to be the fit person, to have a lean body, muscle mass, vibrant, healthy, to be able to move around with your kids, to be able to lead your community, to coach people or teams, kids, to be able to be their best people, like to be the best athletes or whatever their jobs are going to be. You set the example. So if you imagine you're the one saying that I don't have time, is the same thing. It's a shift of priorities. It's like you're going to make the time if you're going to make this something that's valuable to you.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It's the wrong question right off the bat because it, like you said, it assumes that there's no time available, which there is. Right? If I always use this example because I think there's no better example. If when Obama was president, he could get up and go for a run for 20 minutes. Like you could go to the gym. You were not as important as him when he was president. You weren't as busy as him when he was president. If you are, I don't know who you are, but you must work secretly for the world government and you're more important than you're like a Rothschild, basically, or a lizard person. So, okay. How can you prevent fitness from interfering with your family time? Well, what I would say is how could you afford to not get into shape for your family? Because ultimately what you do has a cascading effect that ushers through the generations under you, through your kids' kids, and so on and so forth. And it's very hard to break these generational curses. And it can start with you in terms of you create this curse, or it could end with you, meaning you end this curse that has come through your family line. So you are the person on that tree that stopped this curse. You need, as a father, you need to be, as a father and husband, you need to be strong. You have to be able to be a protector. You have to be able to provide. And in order to do that, a large part of that is also being physically in shape. And that's going to inspire your children to lead that same style of life. And guess what? If you're upset that your wife does not look good as you want her to, or she doesn't want to bang you anymore, well, guess what? If you're in shape, well, then all that will probably go away instantly, because then all of a sudden your wife will start saying, hey, can I go to the gym with you? Your kids will start saying at a young age, hey, Dad, I want to do that exercise you were just doing. That was fun. Mm-hmm. All these problems that you have that are perceived problems go away from just doing the opposite of what you think is the right thing to do. Your wife and kids are upset that you're not able to spend as much quality time with them or whatnot. Well, if you prioritize getting some time into the gym, well, now you're actually able to spend quality time with them because of the extra energy boost you'll have from that. Your general health, your ability to move and be mobile and play with your kids and spend time with your wife. All of these things impact one another. It's the opposite is true from the way the question was framed.
You just got to prioritize. It's prioritizing time. All this is really time management. It really is. It's not like it's some magic trick. It's not some pill that you have to swallow to automatically have this outcome. It's at the end of the day, it's you have a 9 to 5 job. You gotta get up early. Let's say 7 a.m. to get to work, and then after work you come home at 6:30 to be generous, and that time is spent with your family. Fine. You have about 2 hours for that to go to bed, right? So you have basically 6:30 all the way up to about 8:30 is work and family. So you're telling me you don't have any time before or after to at least spend an hour for yourself to work out, to be fit? It's no, you do have the time. It's just what you choose with that time. And it does not have to be every single day. The whole point is that
there's people that do 3 30-minute workouts a week that are CEOs of companies and they stay in really good shape. They follow good eating habits. They do really good workouts in those 30 minutes, 3 times a week. And they live a very healthy life. And that's the best they could do because they really are busy because they're a CEO, yet they still find the time. How you do one thing is how you do another thing. If you're really good at making money, you're the top of your company, a lot of those people are actually very healthy. If you're not as good at making money, you're just the next guy that makes a good amount of money, well, then you might not be as healthy because how you do one thing, how you compete in one arena is how you compete in another. It's not complicated. Like, that's not rocket science. It's just truth.
Mm-hmm.
But people don't want to hear that. They want to be confronted with that because they're happy. They're complacent being mediocre. They're complacent being average.
Yeah.
It's not the way to lead your life, because then you're telling your kids it's okay to be average. It's not. It's not okay. Like, you're like, people are going to tell you like, you're good enough. You're good enough. Like, it's okay. This is the way you're born. Like, no, you're not good enough. You need to be better. You know?
That's Asian disappointment every step of the way.
Exactly. That's why Chris almost jumps off a bridge every now. Imagine.
No matter what Elias does, I'm gonna make sure that I'm always disappointed, so he has to do better. That's the Asian disappointment syndrome.
It's so funny. Yeah, don't take it to that extreme, guys.
It's part of the family. It's part of the Asian culture.
So you should Photoshop on like one of those straw hats, like at the end of the video.
We have one downstairs.
Oh, so you can just like literally have one.
Thanks for listening to this podcast. If you got value and you want to continue getting value, subscribe. You can follow us on our Instagram handles. Mine is Coach_Chris Lee.
Mine's BenjiTucker.fit.